22nd Amendment states, "No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President or acted as President for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected President shall be elected to the office of the President more than once." Essentially, this amendment limits the number of times a person can be elected President to 2. The founders of the United States debated whether to place term limits on the presidency all the way back during the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Some had considered a one-term presidency of 3 years or 7 years, but as with many things at the convention, the delegates resorted to a compromise that resulted in the Electoral College with 4-year terms and no term limits. So why have most presidents before this amendment was ratified only served 2 terms? George Washington famously set a 2-term precedent when he willingly stepped down after his 2nd term. Most presidents after him followed this precedent. Some, like Ulysses Grant, did consider a 3rd term, but did not have enough support to run again. Many also believe that perhaps Abraham Lincoln may have been popular enough to be elected again, but of course he was killed during his 2nd term. There was one president, though, who broke from his predecessors in this regard, and that was FDR. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was one of the most popular presidents, leading the nation through the Great Depression and World War II. As a result, he was elected 4 times. Despite his popularity, this did raise concerns, not least of all for the opposing party, the Republicans. In 1944, when FDR was running for his 4th term, Thomas Dewey, his Republican contender, proposed an amendment that would set term limits on the presidency. To be fair, Democrats had done the same thing in 1912 when Teddy Roosevelt had considered running for a 3rd term. In fact, by 1947, the idea of setting term limits had been proposed to Congress at least 200 times, but it had never managed to pass both houses of Congress where it could be ratified by the states. So FDR won the election in 1944, but died shortly after being inaugurated. By the late 1940s, Republicans and Southern Democrats, who by that point were not the biggest fans of FDR nor his successor Harry Truman, united to pass the amendment in 1947. The states took their time in the ratification process, but eventually the amendment was ratified in 1951. In most cases, the 22nd Amendment is straightforward, limiting the number of terms that a president can serve to 2. However, there is a situation where a president could serve more than 2 terms. For example, when President John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963, then Vice President Lyndon Johnson became president, but was in office for less than 2 years. So he would have been eligible to be elected 2 more times, thus serving 2 full terms in addition to finishing JFK's term. However, this loophole only works if a person is vice president before becoming president for 2 terms, because the 12th Amendment states, "No person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States." So unless the Constitution is changed, once a person serves 2 full terms as president, that's it. That's it.